Hello students, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to cover the weed classification. In earlier classes we have already covered weed beneficial effects and harmful effects of weeds and crop weed competition. If you have not watched them, then just go and watch them, and if you want the proper notes, then you can pause the video or pause the lecture and you just note it down, because it is very important to know the weeds harmful and beneficial effect as well as the classification of the weeds. So these are the basic things when you are studying the weed management or weed science class. Then these are the basic things you have to go through. Okay. So why we should classify weeds? Why we should classify anything? To know about them in detail, to know about each category in detail, and to study better with certain characteristics, right? That's why we need to classify them. So why we classify weeds? To group different weeds according to the certain specific characteristics, and it is in study their biology and ecology. Then effective control measures we can take by classifying the weeds different according to their different characteristics. So there are different types of classification of weeds. First one is based on life cycle, and we call it as ontogeny of the weed. So how we characterize or how we classify the weeds based on ontogeny or life cycle? That is, there are three types of weeds based on ontogeny or life cycle. One is annual weed, one is biennial weed, and another one is perennial weed. Annual weed means starting from sowing to its harvesting or its seed setting, that takes 1 year or 1 season. Okay, annual weed means starting from it completes its life cycle within 1 year or 1 season. Okay, so there are different types of annual weeds. One is summer annual, one is winter annual, one is rainy season annual, and another is multi-season annual. What do you mean by summer annual? Summer annual means it completes its life cycle in summer season. Winter annual means it completes its life cycle in winter season, and rainy season annual means it completes its life cycle in kharif season or rainy season. Okay, then multi-season annual means it can be, you can see these weeds in summer season as well as winter season as well as rainy season. Okay, it may be in summer and winter season, it may be in summer and and the rainy season. So it is not confined to a particular season, it may be in different season, but remember these are annual weeds, right? So some are summer annual, some are rainy annual, some are winter annual, and some are multi-season annual. Then what do you understand by biennial weed? Biennial weed means it completes its life cycle within 2 year or 2 season. Okay, so in the first season or first year it completes its vegetative life cycle, and in the second year or second season it completes its reproductive life cycle. Then perennial weed means it completes its life cycle in 2 or more years. Okay, more than 2 years, right? That is perennial weeds. And based on usual mode of reproduction of perennial weed, they are being classified into 3 types. One is simple perennial, one is creeping perennial, another one is woody perennial. Based on depth of root system, they are again classified as shallow rooted perennial and deep rooted perennial. So as I was saying, that annual weeds, they germinate, grow and produce seeds within a season or within a year. In Indian condition, like in subtropical condition, these weeds complete their life cycle within a season, but in temperate climate, their growth duration is higher. So this may complete their whole growth. It may extends from 2 to 3 season or maximum up to 1 year. That's why we told that annual weed means it completes its life cycle within 1 season or 1 year. Okay, then annual weed mostly propagated through seeds. So why we are studying these annual weeds? What is the benefits of knowing one weed is annual or biennial or perennial? So mostly annual weeds, they mainly propagated through seeds. So we must control them before the flowering stage, because after flowering only seed set happens in annual weeds. So we must control these weeds before flowering, right? And they show prolonged and variable seed dormancy, emerge in high density and can withstand overcrowding. As these weeds propagate through seeds, they must be controlled before flowering, I was telling you. So they are being classified, as we have already discussed, they are being classified as summer season annual, winter season or monsoon or rainy season annual, winter season annual, and multi-season annual. And these are certain examples. Summer season annual means they germinate and complete their life cycle during summer months. Suppose for example Amaranthus viridis, Ageratum coniozoides, Digitaria sanguinalis, Digitaria arvensis. Okay, these are summer season annual. Then rainy or monsoon season annual, that is germinate and complete their life cycle during monsoon season. For example, Camelina bengalensis, Trianthema portulacastrum, Setaria glauca. Then winter season annual, they grow mainly during winter or cold season. Okay, for example, Chenopodium album, Avena fatua, Phalaris minor, Melilotus species. Then multi-season annual means we were already discussing that they are annual weeds, but you cannot confine them in particular season. They may be seen in variable seasons. Like suppose one weed, they may grow in summer as well as rainy. They may grow in summer as well as winter, like that. So they are multi-season annual. Suppose for example Echinoclea colonna, Eclipta alba, Eleusine indica, Phyllanthus nerudi. These are multi-season annual weeds. Then about biennial weed. Biennial weed means they complete their life cycle in 2 seasons. We were already discussing 2 season or 2 year. It form rosette stage or remain vegetative. That is the first year. In first year it may be in vegetative stage, and that is called rosette stage. Then in the second year they produce flower and they set seed and completes life cycle. Okay, these weeds mostly found in perennial crops. These weeds are propagated mainly through seeds, hence should be controlled in their vegetative stage or before flowering. Okay, clear? So why we should control annual and biennial weeds before flowering? Because they mainly propagated through seeds, so we should not let them to flower and seed set. Okay. Then for example, biennial weed example, Daucus carota, that is wild carrot, Cesium intybus, Chicorium intybus, that is chicory, Tribulus terrestris, that is puncture vine, Asphodelus sternifolius, that is wild onion. These are example of biennial weed. Then perennial weeds. What does it mean? They complete their life cycle in more than 2 years. If one weed that is completing its life cycle in more than 2 years, then that is, we call it as perennial weeds. For the first time they flower in the second year. Okay, in the first year they complete their vegetative stage, and from second year onwards they flower and produce seeds. So they mainly propagated through vegetative structure. That means they may propagate through rhizome, they may propagate through stolon, they may be propagated through bulbs or corms, like that. Based on their as we were discussing, based on their reproduction, they are being classified as simple perennial, creeping perennial, and woody perennial. Simple perennial means they reproduce mainly by seeds like Lantana camara, Sonchus arvensis, Oxalis latifolia. These are simple perennial. They mainly propagated through seeds. Then creeping perennial means they reproduce predominantly by vegetative means like Imperata cylindrica, Sanodon dactylon, Cyperus rotundus, etc. Then woody perennial, mostly seen in pasture and plantation crops having woody branches and stem. Their stems are woody in nature, so they are known as woody perennial, like Prosopis juliflora, Lantana camara. These are woody perennials. Based on depth of the root system, they are again classified as shallow rooted perennial and deep rooted perennial. So shallow rooted perennials, these are roots and rhizomes confined only to phoroslice, that means up to 15 cm or 15 to 30 cm. Suppose for example quack grass or Agropyron ripen, Bermuda grass or Sanodon dactylon. These are shallow rooted perennial. Then deep rooted perennial having root system deeper than 1 meter. Suppose for example Johnson grass like Sorghum halepens, Canada thistle, or Cirsium arvens, arrowweed, that is Pluchia lanceolata. These are deep rooted perennial. Then based on nature of stem, they are again classified as woody weed, semi woody weed, and herbaceous weed. Woody weed means their stem is woody in nature, that means stiff in nature, and is having deep root system. For example Lantana camara, Prosopis juliflora. Then semi woody weed means the stem is semi-woody in nature and having deep root system like Abutilon species, Croton species. Then herbaceous weeds having green stem and green and succulent stem. For example Amaranthus viridis, Celosia argentea. So these are the classification. This was the classification based on ontogeny or life cycle of the weed. They are classified as annual, biennial, and perennial. Then further we can classify weeds based on their morphology. Morphology means their appearance. Okay, morphology means their appearance. We can classify the weeds based on their morphology also. Suppose for example some weeds are monocotyledonous weed, some are dicotyledonous weed. Then some weeds are grassy weeds, some are sage weed, and some are broadleaf weed. Okay, so they are classified accordingly. So again, grasses may be narrow leaf, may be broadleaf. Okay, for example, narrow leaf grass, Phalaris minor, Digitaria sanguinalis, Avena fatua, Commelina bengalensis. Then broadleaf monocot, Eichhornia crassipes, Sanotes species, Commelina species. Then okay, so there is again some characteristics of grass, sage, and broadleaf weeds. You must remember, this is very important. Characteristics or differentiation between grass, broadleaf, and sages. Okay, so most important family in grassy weeds, that is Poaceae. In broadleaf weed, the most important family is Asteraceae. In sages, the most important family is Cyperaceae. The stem characteristics of grass is cylindrical, jointed nodes having hollow internode. That means the internode is hollow. In broadleaf, the stem is generally circular, hairy, distinct nodes and internodes present. In sages, the stem is generally triangular, solid, nodes and internodes hardly visible. You can hardly find nodes and internodes in sages. Then what about leaves? Leaf morphology. Here in grasses, generally narrow leaf, thin, ligulate and open leaf sheath you can find. Then in broadleaf, the leaves are broad, ovate, often divided into leaflets. In sages, the leaves are narrow, thin, linear, tristincus, without ligule and closed leaf sheath. Okay, in sages you cannot find ligule. Leaf venation, mostly in grasses the leaf venation is parallel. In broadleaf, the leaf venation is netted or palmate. In sages it is parallel. Then ligule and auricle, ligule present in grasses, auricle present or absent. In broadleaf, ligule and auricle absent. In sages, ligule and auricle also absent. What about tillering? Tillering, it may have tillering capacity. In grasses, it may have tillering capacity. In broadleaf, tillering hardly found or completely absent. In sages, it is completely absent. And what about branching? Branching is generally absent in grasses, generally present in broadleaf and generally absent in sages. What about propagation? Mainly propagated by rhizome and stolon. Grasses are mainly propagated by rhizome and stolon. Broadleaves are mainly propagated using seeds. And sages mostly propagated through bulbs, tubers and corms. Then what about root system? Mostly grasses have fibrous root system. Okay, and broadleaves have deep or tap root system, and sages also have fibrous root system. Nitrogen fixation ability, grasses do not fix atmospheric nitrogen. Some broadleaves of leguminous family, they can fix atmospheric nitrogen. Sages cannot fix atmospheric nitrogen. Fruit of grasses mostly known as caryopsis. In broadleaf, their name varies with different family, and in sages they are mostly knot or akin. Germination, mostly hypogeal. In grasses, mostly the germination is hypogeal. In broadleaf, mostly it is epigeal, and in sages, terminal part comes out at the time of germination. Growth type, mostly determinate. The grasses, the growth type is mostly determinate. In broadleaf, it may have indeterminate growth, and sages mostly determinate. So these are based on the morphology, grass, sage and broadleaf. Next is based on nutritional habitat. Okay, so based on nutritional habitat, weeds are being classified into autotroph weed and heterotroph weed. Okay, autotroph weed means they can synthesize their own food. Okay, by using sunlight, or they are mostly photoautotroph. They can use sunlight and they can produce glucose and they can produce their own food. Okay, in the other hand, there are some heterotroph weeds or parasitic weeds are there. So they cannot produce their own food. They depend on host plant. They depend on other plant or host plant, and they draw nutrition from the host plant or other plants. Okay, they are heterotroph weed. Autotroph weed, example like Lolium temulentum, Avena fatua, Commelina species. Most of the weeds are autotroph weed. They can produce their own food. They can synthesize their own food. In the other hand, heterotroph weed or parasitic weed, there are some few parasitic weeds. You can you must remember their names. So they partially or completely, they depends on the host plant. Okay, So they are again classified into partial parasitic weed and complete or total parasitic weed. Again, total parasitic weed again classified as total root parasite, total shoot parasite. Again, the partial parasitic weed again classified as partial root parasite, partial shoot parasite. So root parasite, total root parasite, example Orobanche species. Partial or hemi root parasite, example Striga species. Total or hollow stem parasite, that is Cuscuta species. Partial or semi stem parasite, that is Loranthus species. You must remember these names. Okay. Total parasite or that is also known as hollow parasite or obligate parasite. They only take food from host plant, okay, and they do not have any other source of food. Okay, this total parasite means they totally depends on the host plant. Okay, so for example, Orobanche species, that is one total parasite that depends on tomato, tobacco, mustard and chickpea. That is, the host plants of Orobanche are tomato, mostly solanaceous crop like tomato, tobacco, then mustard and chickpea. Then Cuscuta is one total stem parasite, and the host plants are alfalfa, Niger and linseed, right? Then partial or semi or hemi or facultative parasite, that means they initially depends upon host plant, but later on they take nutrition from soil or they may photosynthesize. Okay, photosynthesize. Like Striga species, that is a partial root parasite. The host plants are sorghum, maize, cowpea. Like that Loranthus species, that is partial stem parasite. Okay, and the host plants are orange, mango and eucalyptus. So this was based on the nutritional habit or nature of competition of the weeds. Then followed by the based on origin. Okay, based on origin of the weed. They are classified as indigenous weed and exotic or alien or introduced weed. What do you mean by indigenous weed? Indigenous weed means they grow in a certain place and they originated in that place and they grow in that particular place. They grow where they are being originated, right? Suppose one weed that is originated in India and that is predominantly found in India. So that is indigenous weed. Okay. Exotic or introduced weed or alien weed. Exotic or introduced or alien weed. We can call them alien weed also. So they are being introduced from other region, from foreign countries. Okay. And mostly the biocontrol agent we use to control the weed flora, that is mostly acted on exotic weeds. Okay, but in indigenous weed we cannot effectively control them using biocontrol agent, right? So suppose for example indigenous weed example Echinoclea species, Dizera arvensis, Euphorbia hitta, these are examples of indigenous weed. And exotic or alien weed example Parthenium hysterophorus, it is introduced from USA. Phalaris minor, it was introduced from Europe or North Africa. Eichhornia crassipes, that is the water hyacinth, that was introduced from South America. Then introduced weed or alien weed again classified as naturalized weed and adventive weed. Okay, naturalized weed means these introduced or alien weeds, they are well established in a particular region. Suppose Parthenium, that is introduced from USA and this is already well established in our country. So that is naturalized weed. For example, Parthenium and Eichhornia. Adventive weed, that means they need further human interference. They need further human interference for their further spread, right? Suppose for example Phalaris minor. If we are not growing wheat, then there will be no Phalaris minor. So for Phalaris minor to introduce or to spread, further human interference is needed. That's why they are known as adventive weed. Clear? So based on origin, weeds are classified as indigenous weed and exotic or alien weed. Again, exotic weeds are being classified as naturalized weed and adventive weeds. Then based on association with crop. Based on association with crops, weeds are classified as season bound weed, crop bound weed and crop associated weed. Season bound weed, crop bound weed and crop associated weed. Season bound weed means you can find these weeds at particular season. That means either in summer season or winter season or maybe rainy season. So they grow in specific season of the year irrespective of the crop grown. Whatever crop you are growing, they only confine to a particular season. Okay. For example, sorghum halepens, that is a summer perennial weed. Cirsium arbens, that is a winter perennial weed. Then crop bound weed means they are having host parasitic relationship with crop plant, right? Crop bound. Difference between crop bound and crop associated weed means, so you can differentiate, like crop bound weed is bound with the crop. That means it is having host parasitic relationship. Most of the parasitic weeds, they are considered to be crop bound weed, right? The parasitic weeds which depends on crop for food completely or partially, that is crop bound weed, like for example Cuscuta, Orobanche, etc. Then crop associated weed means they are associated with the crop, okay, for some specific reason. That reason may be for specific microclimate and may be due to different types of mimicry with the crop. Okay. So some weeds, they need specific microclimate, and those crop microclimate where it is being associated, that microclimate favors the growth of the weed. Okay. For example, Chicoryum intybus, Coronopus didymus, these are associated with weed of Berseem and Lucerne. Okay. So Berseem and Lucerne microclimate favors the growth of these weeds like Chicoryum intybus and Coronopus didymus. Okay. So they mainly require shady, cool climate, moist habitat. These weeds they require, so they are getting those microclimate, the favorable microclimate from those crop situation, crop microclimate. So they grow there, right? Then some weed mimicry with crop. Okay, weeds pretend in various form for survival and continued existence, that is known as mimicry. So there are different types of mimicry. One is seed mimicry, phenotypic mimicry, chronological mimicry, and biochemical mimicry. Seed mimicry means those mostly satellite weeds where the crops as well as weed they mature at same time, and the height of their seed setting, like their the panicle or maybe the seed bearing structure, that is at similar height. So while harvesting, they are also harvested with the crop plant. So and their seeds are morphologically similar, or their seeds are having similar structure and shape with the as of the crop seed. So it is very difficult to remove them, right? So they are mixed with the crop seed and they are being sown in the field. So like that, they are having seed mimicry. Suppose for example Lolium temulentum, one weed is there, then Agrostema githago, one weed, they are having similar seed structure that of wheat seed. Okay, so they generally contaminate with the wheat seed, and that is known as seed mimicry. Then another one is phenotypic mimicry, means they are having similar vegetative and phenological or morphological structure. For example, Echinoclea in rice, Avena fatua in wheat, they are having similar morphology. So while weeding, you cannot differentiate, or it is hard, it is very tough to differentiate weeds and crop. So they cannot be easily controlled. Then chronological mimicry, that means weeds having similar height and ripening time or the growth duration. So like Phalaris minor in wheat, these are having chronological mimicry. Then biochemical mimicry means herbicide tolerance of weed or selectivity of herbicide due to certain alteration in biochemical and physiological function. Okay, weed that is earlier susceptible but become tolerance, that is known as biochemical mimicry. So there are different types of mimicry for which different weeds are associated with different crops. Then based on ecology or habitat of growth, weeds are being classified as terrestrial weed, that means mostly grown in lands. Then aquatic weed, that means they are grown in aquatic habitat, right? Then terrestrial weed again classified as xerophytic weed, mostly seen in dryland condition. Then mesophytic weed, then wetland weeds. Then mesophytic weeds again classified into cultivated or arable crop weed, then plantation and orchard weed, pasture or grassland weeds, non-crop wasteland or roadside weed. Okay, aquatic weeds again classified as floating weed, emergent weed, submerged weed, and marginal weed. For example, xerophytic weed, example Opuntia species, Prosopis juliflora, Pluchia lanceolata. Xerophytic weed means they require very minimal amount of water for their growth. Mainly the desert weeds, right? Those are known as xerophytic weed or desert weed or dryland weeds. For example, Opuntia, Prosopis, Pluchia. Then mesophytic weed, for example, Sanodon dactylon, Cyperus rotundus. They require a normal water requirement like that of crop plant. Okay. Then cultivated field weed or arable crop weed or agristal. This is known as agristal. For example, Avena fatua, Phalaris minor. These are mostly crop associated with wheat plant. Okay. Then obligate weed or anthrophyte, facultative weed or apophyte. Obligate weed means these weeds only present in crop field. Okay, in disturbed land or crop field. Those weeds they only present in crop field, that is known as obligate weed or anthrophyte. Okay. Facultative weed means or apophyte means they primarily grown wild but accidentally introduced in crop field. They are known as facultative weed or apophyte, like Opuntia species, Allium venial, Argemon mexicana. They are mostly wasteland weed or wild weed, but they accidentally come in crop field. Then weeds, those mainly grown in plantation or orchard weed, that is Chromolena odorata, Sanodon dactylon, Parthenium hysteroporus. Mainly grown in pasture or grassland or lawn weed, that is Sanodon dactylon, Cyperus rotundus, Mellotus species. Non-crop wasteland or roadside weed, for example, Tribulus terrestris, Opuntia species, Lantana camara, Parthenium hysteroporus, Xanthium strumarium, Calotropis procera, etc. Then again, wasteland weeds are classified as ruderal and escape. Ruderal means weeds of highly disturbed fertile areas, for example, landfill, roads, compost pit, channel bonds, for example, Parthenium hysteroporus, Rumex acetosella. Escape means some crops under cultivation in garden, they frequently found in the wasteland or channel bonds. Okay, some crops itself they found in channel bonds or the irrigation channel. Okay, so for example, cucurbit family, cucurbitaceous crops. Okay, they mostly you can find in like bitter gourd, then some spine gourd. Okay, you can mostly find in bonds and irrigation channel also. Then what about different types of aquatic or hydrophytic weed? They mostly grown in water bodies or they are some part of their life cycle that is completed in water bodies, right? So they are known as aquatic weeds. For example, some are floating aquatic, that means leaves float freely on surface and roots hardly touch the bottom. That is, for example, Eichonia crassipes, Nymphia pubescens, Pistia stratiores. These are floating aquatic weed. Then emergent weed, roots or rhizomes remain inside the soil, but stem and leaves emerge out of the water, like Typha elephantina, Nelumbo nuciflora, Jusia repens. These are emergent aquatic weed. Then submerged aquatic weed, having roots, stem, leaves, but grow mostly underwater. Okay, this totally completely submerged in the water, like Hydrilla verticillata, Salvinia molesta, Vallisneria species or Tricularia species. Then marginal or amphibian weed, grow in marshy land or shallow ponding water, like Typha angustata, Marsilia quadrifolia, Ludwigsia parviflora. These are marginal or amphibian weeds. Then based on relative position or presence of weed, based on relative position of the weed, weeds are classified as absolute weed, relative weed and rogue. Absolute weed means these are wild plants and weedy plants in nature and having no value for farmer. Absolute weed means these weeds are having no value for farmer. Suppose for example Rumex species. Okay. Then relative weed means that is relative to situation. That means suppose there is a maize plant in our rice field, that we can call it as relative weed. The maize plant in rice field can be called a relative weed. Okay. That is not an actual weed, but at that situation that is weed in nature. In rice field, the maize plant, it is weedy in nature. So that may be assigned as relative weed, right? Then rogue. What is rogue? That is other variety. If suppose we are growing the rice variety Swarna, if rice variety Padma or maybe Joya that introduced in that or Nobin variety that introduced in Swarna rice field. So if any other variety introduced in one crop or one farming practice, then that is known as rogue and we have to remove that. Okay. So based on relative position or presence, they are being classified as absolute weed, relative weed, and ROG. Then based on photosynthetic pathway or physiology, weeds are being classified as C3 weed, C4 weed, and CAM weed. Okay, C3 weeds or Kelvin cycle. Those weeds, they mainly the photosynthetic process is mainly happen through Kelvin cycle, and the first stable product is a 3 carbon compound that is known as C3 cycle. So here the carbon dioxide acceptor is RUBP, ribulose bisphosphate, and the first stable product is PGA, phosphoglyceric acid, that is a 3 carbon compound. That's why these weeds are known as C3 weeds. And leaves do not have Kranz type anatomy here, and carbon dioxide fixation efficiency is very less, water use efficiency is less, for example Chenopodium and Cyperus. C4 weeds, they are having Hatch and Slack cycle of photosynthesis. Primary carbon dioxide acceptor is PEP carboxylase, and first stable product is oxaloacetic acid or malic acid. They are 4 carbon compound. Higher carbon dioxide fixation efficiency and having higher water use efficiency than C3 crop or C3 weed. For example, Cyanodon dactylon, Eleusine indica, Amaranthus viridis, these are examples of C4 weeds. Then CAM weed means crassulacean acid metabolism. It fixes atmospheric carbon dioxide in dark or at night, perform Kelvin cycle during daytime. These are mostly xerophytic in nature and having drought tolerance characteristics. For example, Ageratum conizoid, Cornija barneriensis. Okay, so this classification was based on photosynthetic pathway. Then based on photoperiod means the requirement of sunlight for flowering. Okay, response of flowering to relative length of day or night. And this photoperiodism concept was proposed by Garner and Allard in 1920. It divided plants into short day plant, long day plant, and day neutral plant. Short day plant means these plants require 8 to 12 hours of day length or long night period for flowering to initiate. For example, Xanthium strumarium, Micania micrantha, these are the short day weeds. Long day weeds means it require longer day length, that means more than 12 hours, and shorter night for flowering. For example, Chromolena odorata, Digitaria sanguinalis, Portulaca oleracea. Day neutral weed or day neutral plant, that means they do not affected by the day length. Okay, they may flower at any time. Okay, the day length do not affect the flowering response. So for example, Parthenium hysterophora, Solanum nigrum, they are day neutral plants. Then based on reaction of herbicide, based on reaction to herbicide, some weeds are herbicide susceptible weed, some weeds are herbicide tolerant weed, some weeds are herbicide resistant weed. Herbicide susceptible weed means they are being controlled by the herbicide. If we apply herbicide, that weed will suppress or it will be controlled. For example, Melilotus indica, Trianthema monogyna, these are herbicide susceptible weed. Then herbicide tolerant weed means certain weeds, they are genetically tolerant to applied herbicide in recommended dose. That herbicide cannot be controlled at recommended dose, and this is genetically modified. For example, Digitaria sanguinalis to pendimethalin. Okay. Then herbicide resistance weed, these weeds were earlier susceptible, but due to repeated application of particular herbicide, there are certain changes. There are certain changes in that weed, changes in physiology or metabolism, so that becomes resistance. Okay. For example, Phalaris minor, that is resistant to isoproteron, Senecio vulgaris, that is resistant to atrazine. These are resistant weed. Then based on undesirability of the weed, some weeds are ephemeral weeds, some weeds are noxious or pernicious weed, some are objectionable weed. Ephemeral weeds means they complete their life cycle within short period of time. Ephemeral weeds, they complete their life cycle within short period of time. For example, Ageratum conizoides, Phyllanthus species. Noxious weed or pernicious weed, they are undesirable and they are troublesome and difficult to control. These weeds are difficult to control. For example, Striga species, Cyperus species, Orobanche species, Eichonia species, Eichonia crassipes, etc. These are known as noxious or pernicious weed. They are very difficult to control. Then objectionable weed means when these seeds of these weeds, they mix with the crop seed, that is very difficult to control. Okay. like Lolium temulentum, Phalaris minor. These seeds having mimicry with wheat seed, and it is very difficult to control. Then chicory seeds, if it is mixed with berseem seed, that is very difficult to control. Then again cuscuta seed with lucerne seed. So these are objectionable weeds. Based on preference to soil reaction, which type of soil reaction that is suitable for which type of weed? Based on that, some weeds are basophile, that means these weeds mostly prefer to grow in saline or alkaline soil. Some are acidophile, these weeds mostly grow in acidic soil. Neutrophile means these weeds mostly prefer to grow in neutral soil. So, for example, basophile weeds example Sonchus arvensis, Rumex acetosa, Agropyron repens. These are example of basophile weeds. Acidophile weed examples are Rumex acetosella, Pteridium species. Neutrophile weed, these are examples are Stellaria media, Polygonum species. This is based on preference to soil reaction. Then based on soil type, which type of soil is suitable for which type of weed? That means some weeds they prefer to grow in black cotton soil, some weeds they prefer to grow in light or red soil, some weeds they prefer to grow in laterite soil. For example, black soil, for example the weeds Sorghum halpens, Digitaria arvens, Amaranthus viridis, they prefer to grow in black soil. Then Digitaria sanguinalis, Leucas aspera, Tribulus terrestris, Euphorbia hitta, they prefer to grow in light or red soil. Chromolena odorata, Lantana camara, Hyptis sabulens species, they are mostly grown in lateritic soil. So this is based on soil type. So what are the different classification we studied today? First one is based on ontogeny, that is the annual, biennial and perennial weed. Then based on the morphology, the grass, sage and broadleaf. Then based on nutritional habitat, that is autotrophic weed, heterotrophic weed or parasitic weed. Then based on origin, some are indigenous weed, some are exotic or alien weed. Based on association with crop, some are season bound weed, some are crop bound weed, some are crop associated weed. Then based on ecology or habitat, some are terrestrial weed, some are aquatic weed. Again terrestrial weeds are classified as xerophytic weed, mesophytic weed and the wetland weeds. Then aquatic weeds, they are again classified as floating aquatic weed, emergent aquatic weed, submerged aquatic weed, marginal aquatic weeds. Then based on the relative position or presence, some are absolute weed, some are relative weed. Based on photosynthetic pathway, some weeds are C3 weed, some are C4 weed and some are CAM weed. Based on photoperiod, some are short day weeds, some are long day weeds, some are day neutral weeds. Based on reaction of herbicide, like some are susceptible weeds, some are herbicide tolerant weed and some are herbicide resistant weeds. Based on undesirability, some weeds are ephemeral weeds, some are noxious or pernicious weed, some are objectionable weed. Then based on preference to soil reaction, some are basophile, some are acidophile, some are neutrophile. And lastly, based on soil type, some prefer to grow in black cotton soil, some prefer to grow in light texture soil, some prefer to grow in laterite soil. So you just take the notes of this, and pausing this video, you can take the notes and you can prepare your own notes for your competitive exam. And if you want a specific lecture on any specific subject of agriculture or more specifically agronomy, then you can comment in the comment section. And okay, see you in the next lecture. Till then, bye bye, have a great day.